Hi everyone, it's Tox from CritsHappen.com. Thanks for watching and welcome back. Today we have another critical review, this time of another GameCrafter.com game called Columbia. Columbia is from Eric and Phuong Boillaud. It's a 2 to 5 player game that says it's about 30 minutes, although in a smaller setting of 2 to 3 players you can actually play as fast as 15 minutes. It says ages 10 and up, but we've played this with Ninja Zach, who's 7, and he's had no problem with it at all. It's a primarily card-based game, and it's going to put you in the role of a woodland runner in the 1700s. There's going to be 2 different trading companies, the Hudson Bay Company and the Northwest Company, who are going to be trying to acquire animal pelts that you've captured while floating down the river. You're going to have canoes, you're going to have traps, you're going to have sell and barter cards that are going to help you both acquire the different animal pelts, sell the different animal pelts, and try to get the most victory points by the end of the game. Both coins and cubes will help you with victory points, but in addition, you're going to have the ability to acquire trading posts from these 2 companies. We'll get into that in the gameplay, but for the meantime, let's jump in our canoes, let's get our best trapping gear possible, and float down the river with Columbia. So here are the components that you get inside of Columbia. You're going to get a set number of coins, greens being 1, pinks being worth 5, and yellows being worth 10. Those will help you keep track of how much money you have to pay for cards to be put into your camp, to trade or swap goods that you have in your traps or in your canoes. And then at the end of the game, coins are worth victory points as well. You also have orange, white, and black cubes to represent beaver, wolf, and bear pelts that you'll be trapping throughout the game. There are river cards, which are essentially just different colors for different players, so I could be the blue player or the green player or the purple player and so on and so forth. And then there are 12 blue and 12 red trading post cards. We'll get into those in a second. In addition, there are 78 expedition cards. Now, in the regular setup for this game, you're going to be vying for the blue and the red expedition cards. And each of those cards that you have the opportunity to win will provide you victory points at the end of the game. The expedition cards are going to be the cards that you'll be drawing into your hand to help you win them. So before we get any further, let's take a look at the different types of trading posts in the blue and in the red. So here you see some of the blue trading post cards that you'll be able to acquire throughout the gameplay. At the bottom you see there's 2 different types of canoes. There's some that have 2 bale spots available, and there's some that will have 3. The expedition cards, which were the brown cards I showed you earlier, have some canoes that also have 1 bale on them as well. The interesting thing about the canoes is when you put your pelts onto canoes, you're not allowed to mix the different types of pelts. So if I already had an orange beaver pelt on this canoe, I couldn't put a white wolf pelt on it as well. We'll get into that a little bit more in the gameplay. In addition, you can see that the 2 barrel or 2 bale canoe will get you 4 victory points at the end of the game, while the 3 bale will get you 3 victory points. In addition, you have 3 different types of sell cards. You have one for orange and beaver, one for white and wolf, and one for black and bear. And as you see, the beavers are worth 1 coin each, the wolves are worth 2 coins each, and the bear are worth 3 coins each. And again, at the end of the game, every coin you have is worth 1 victory point. So if you have 20 coins at the end, you're going to have 20 victory points just out of your coins. Now, let's take a look at some of the red trading post cards and see some of the differences in those that you could acquire as well. Here's some of the red trading post cards that you'll be able to acquire throughout the gameplay as well. The red trading posts are primarily traps. And you'll see there are traps that will hold 1 beaver pelt, 1 wolf pelt, and 1 bear pelt. Each of these will provide you 2, 1, or 0 victory points. And at the end at the bottom here, you'll see that there's a completely blank card that just is worth 5 victory points. So you can get a lot of victory points by acquiring that trading post, but you're not going to be able to utilize it for any actions throughout the gameplay. So you can see there's a big difference between the blue trading posts, allowing you to utilize canoes to store the pelts that you've acquired and then sell those pelts, and the red trading posts that are going to allow you to capture and trap those animal pelts as well. So how does this all work in gameplay? Well, let's take a look at setup and we'll show you a little bit more. So here you see the starting setup and our side of the board for a game of Columbia. To begin, you're going to take all 12 blue trading posts and all 12 red trading posts, and you're going to shuffle them separately to form their own piles. And then you're going to deal out 6 of each, alternating starting from left to right with blue. Now you can't see all of them here, but you do see it goes blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red. We as players are going to be competing to obtain those trading posts as a permanent part of our camp. Now this area above my camp area is going to be where I'm going to keep those permanent cards that I may acquire. This area here to the right of my river card is going to be the fluctuating part of my camp. Now what do I mean by that? Well, at the very beginning of the game, each player is going to be dealt 5 cards from the expedition stack. Those 5 cards are going to make up your starting base camp. And you can place them in any order you want. But the first thing to note is you have to pay their cost. And in the upper left, each card will have a variable cost, either 0, 1, or 2 coins. So in this case, this card is free, this card is 1, this card is 0, and the last 2 cards cost me 2. So to set up my initial base camp is going to cost me a total of 5 coins. Each player also starts the game with 10 coins, so already I've lost half of my coins. But hopefully I'll be able to make that back by playing through the game, trapping pelts, and selling them to trading posts. So, you'll also notice that at the very top of the cards there are different symbols, like teepees or dream catchers or totems, and underneath them they have hash marks. This is where an interesting concept comes into the game. Essentially what happens is at the very beginning of each round, each player is going to take this little house token and move it on top of the very next trading post that you're going to be competing over. Now in this case, this is a blue trading post. It is a sell card, and it allows us to sell a black bear pelt for 3 coins per pelt that we sell. It's also worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. So that's a pretty valuable card to be able to get. But how do you get those cards? Well, you're going to utilize those symbols along the top of each of the cards in your camp to make the best possible poker hand, is the easiest way to describe it. So if you look at my camp right now, we're competing for a blue trading post card. So the only symbols I'm going to look at are the blue ones. The red ones will only be looked at when we're competing for a red trading post card. So in this case, I actually have 3 of a kind. I have 3 teepees between my cards in my camp. If that were the highest among all the players playing, I would acquire this card into my permanent area of my camp. Now, what do I mean by permanent area? Well, let's take a look at how the rest of the turn unfolds, and you'll see how your base camp changes, but your permanent area stays the same. So on your turn, you're allowed to take 2 of 4 actions. After all players have competed for and one player has won the permanent trading post card for that round, you then have the option of trapping, transporting, swapping, or selling. So let's take a look at the different actions and see how they work. If I were to declare I wanted to trap, I would look at all of the cards in my base camp and in my permanent camp that were trap cards that had empty paw prints on them, and I would essentially fill them up. So in this case, if I were to choose to trap, I would put a orange on my beaver, I would put a white on my wolf, and I would put a black on my bear. And I've now trapped 1 of each of those. Now in addition, I could transport. To transport means you have to take already trapped pelts and put them onto a canoe. Now in this case, as I've said before, you're not allowed to have multiple colors or multiple different types of pelts on the same canoe. So I can't choose to transport and move all 3 of these cubes onto my canoe, even though I have 3 bale spots on that canoe to possibly hold pelts. So when you look at the strategies of the game, the right thing for me to do would be to move the black card or the black pelt from my trap onto my canoe. Now again, I said you can only do 2 of the 4 things. So while I could potentially use my sell card here to sell this black pelt for 3 coins, I can't do it this turn. I have to wait to next turn. Now, I could also potentially swap. as I mentioned before, that you're going to have only the ability to keep all of one type of a pelt on a canoe, you'll see here I have the ability to swap a orange cube and 2 coins for a black, or a white cube and 1 coin for a black. Let's say this was my turn already at the very beginning of my turn. Previous turn I had trapped and transported the black bear pelt onto my canoe. If this was my setup in my base camp, I could choose to swap as one of my actions. And swapping lets you activate each swap card inside of your camp, whether it's permanent or whether it's in your base camp. What I would do is I would go down the line and I would say, well, for this I could take 1 orange cube and 2 coins and get a black. So I could take an orange and 2 coins, so I get 3 in exchange, and I would transition that to a black. Now this is okay to have a different color pelt in a trap from a swap action. It's only the canoes that you have to have the same type of pelt on. So moving down the line again, I can see that I have the ability to take 1 white cube and 1 coin and swap that out for a black as well. Now I have 2 additional black bear pelts and 2 open slots on my canoe. So as my second action for that turn, I could choose to transport, and I could take as many cubes as I want off of my traps and put them on as many open bales of canoes I have in my camp, as long as I stick to the same type of pelt on the same canoes. So that canoe is getting ready to sell, which is great. But let's say we're progressing further in the game. Let's just go ahead and move to the next turn. Well, the first thing that happens is after your initial setup, the last card in your camp closest to your river is going to go away and get discarded. So this would go to a common discard pile. Then everything else would shift down. Now I didn't mention this earlier, but after you set up your base camp of 5 cards, each player is dealt 4 additional cards. So you're going to have 4 cards in your hand that you're going to get to choose from, in addition to a 5th that you're going to draw at the beginning of the next turn. So I have 5 cards to choose what card I'm going to put as a 5th card in my base camp now. Now the advantage of that is that I get to see the symbols at the top of my cards in my hand. I know I'm going to be competing for a red trading post next, which is worth 5 victory points. And I can make the decision, do I want to put out a card that's going to help me strategically in terms of actions I could take, or do I want to play a card that's going to help me to make up a better poker hand from symbols to acquire that trading post? Or could I possibly do both? So looking at the 4 cards I have in play, I have a pair of flames, and that's it. I do have an additional card that is another flame and more canoes. So that could help me both acquire the red trading post card and set up to have more canoes to transfer more pelts. So I would put this face down as all other players would. We would reveal at the same time. We would pay the cost that we would have to cover for that card, so in this case that's 2. And then we would see who has the best poker hand. And again, if my 3 of a kind was the best, I would take that red card, put it into my permanent camp, and be prepared to start taking my actions. Now selling is very simple. Let's say this is my turn setup and I'm ready to take an action, and one of them is the last one we haven't talked about, which is selling. You would go through both your permanent cards and your base camp, and you would look at each card that has the ability to sell. In this case I only have 1, but it's a good one because it's going to let me take my black pelts, and for each cube I sell I get 3 coins. I can take all 3 off of this canoe. If I had 3 on this canoe and 3 on this canoe, I could take all 6 off of there. So in this case, I'm going to take off 3 from that canoe, and I'm going to get 9 coins and get 9 points. That's going to help me towards the end of the game, or coins I could use to put more cards out. Now, gameplay is going to continue like this, with each turn ending, the leftmost card being discarded, all the cards being shifted down, and a new card coming out, competing over the next trading post, and again, only looking at the color of the symbols for the color of the trading post, and then trying to manage best as possible the 2 actions you can take to maximize both points and coins that you can get at the end of the game. And at the end of the game, you're going to get points for the permanent cards that you've acquired from the trading posts. You're going to get points for each of the coins, 1 point per coin in your camp. And then in addition, you're going to get points for pairs of pelts. So if at the end of the game this was my setup, I would have 7 points from my 2 cards. I would have 9 points from my coins, so I'd have 16 total there. And then I would get another point for a pair of beavers and another point for a pair of wolf. So I have a total of 5, 7, 16, 17, 18 points. And whoever has the most points at the end is considered the winner. So that's Columbia. Let's take a look at the components. We'll talk a little bit about the gameplay, and then we'll talk about the experience of the overall game. Component-wise, some interesting things. Really 2. First were the coins. The coins are these Mardi Gras style coins, which are a little interesting. They're yellow, pink, and green, which doesn't really fit with the Native American type artwork that you'll see that's on the cards. So while it doesn't take away from the game, it doesn't really add to the game. And I totally understand that from a GameCrafter.com decision point for publishers, they have to pick whatever the best components are compared to the cost that's going to impact the game. So, by no means is it a negative, it's just something that may leave you scratching your head. Now, the cards are great quality. The GameCrafter does a really good job with their cards, and the quality is very good, both for shuffling and not getting damaged. The artwork on the cards is beautiful. You have this Native American flair and artwork, and it's just really different and really interesting. It really pops off, and being a symbol-driven game is very easy to start to identify very quickly what symbols are what and what does what. The only negative really from the artwork, the little hash marks that are underneath each of the symbols at the top to represent the rank order for them are really, really close together and really tiny. So if you don't have the best eyesight, it might get a little quirky to figure out which is which. But after you start to just realize the ranking of them, it won't even become something that's part of the game. You won't even pay attention to the hash marks whatsoever. Overall though, very good quality components as always. The GameCrafter never disappoints in that case. Now in terms of gameplay, there's quite a bit to this little game. As I said, you can get a 2 to 3 player game done in about 10 minutes. Larger games of 4 or 5 players could take 30 to 45 minutes. But it is very fast paced and it's very quick action. Because you only have 2 actions per turn, because you see 4 of the 5 cards in your camp every time shifting, you're going to be able to plan and strategize over what you're going to do next. So from a turn-by-turn basis, what I really liked about the game was that there were a lot of strategic and a lot of tactical choices. Now obviously in Utopia, the best thing possible is you're going to play your new 5th card. It's going to both allow you to take actions during your turn and maximize your value, and it's also going to allow you to compete and possibly acquire the trading post card that's up next. But the hard part is it doesn't always work like that, and you're going to have to make decisions on, do I want to hold off on maybe doing some actions I want to do right now and acquire the trading post card and get victory points? And possibly help me? Or do I want to hold off from the trading post and start to build up a base camp that's really going to allow me to take multiple actions, turn over turn, and gain a lot of points and coins and victory points? So you have a lot of tactical and a lot of strategic choices. The other thing, and we didn't mention this during the gameplay video, is that the leftmost card next to your river card that leaves at the end of each turn, if it's a canoe or it's a trap and it has pelts on it, they go away. So you really do have to time best maximum possible efficiency in that base camp and the trading post cards that you have to make sure that you don't keep losing things falling off the end of the river. That makes it really fun, really tense, but healthy tense, and a lot of action-packed choices in terms of moving turn to turn. Now in terms of experience, this is where things kind of got a little odd, because you don't necessarily interact with other players in this game. You're really kind of working with what's in front of you. If I were to trap and sell, or swap and transport, or any of my 2 actions, that doesn't really impact the next player at all. They're still going to do what they want to do with the cards in their camp. There's no cards nor abilities from any of the things in the game that are going to let me rearrange or change or shift or do anything to any other player's camp. So what I do on my turn, I finish, it goes to the next player's turn. Unfortunately, that does lead to I play my turn and I wait and I wait and I wait and I wait, and then it comes back and then we go on to the next round. That had some ups and downs throughout the gameplay, but thankfully, being that this game is so fast, it's not that big of a negative for it from an experience standpoint. But it is good to know going into it. The real big interaction is when you're playing that fifth card into your base camp. You're determining who has the best poker hand from the symbols, and then taking that permanent trading post card and putting it into your camp. That can get really exciting, especially when you think you have a great hand, like you have 4 of a kind, and all of a sudden you get beat by 5 of a kind, you didn't realize it. Or you have 2 pairs and you get trumped by a full house. There's a lot of nice little interactions there that are really, really fun throughout the gameplay. Overall, at the end of the day, from components, from gameplay, and from experience, Columbia is a hit of a game. It's something I'd highly suggest to check out on the Game Crafter, and you can do so by checking out the links in the information below our video here. We'd like to thank Eric and Phuong for providing us a copy of the game to demo for you and show you. And if you have an interest, take a second and click on that link and see their game page over at thegamecrafter.com. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts if you like this critical review in your comments below on the YouTube channel. You can of course find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Google Plus by searching Crits Happen, and at our homepage at critshappen.com. But until we see you next time, we hope you have as much fun as possible trapping all the animal pellets and trading with the trading companies inside of Columbia. Thanks so much for watching, keep rolling those dice, and we hope they're all crits.